So, we have a fresh new remake of The Office, and this time it's set in Australia. It's an interesting remake, as it's not really based on the original UK version, but much more based on the American remake. You can see this in the characters and set design, with the layout of The Office itself resembling Dunder Mifflin far more than Wernham Hogg, with some shots looking very close indeed. This also shows itself in the characters as well. You see, in the American remake, they had a slight problem due to the sheer number of episodes and series they produced. As the show went on longer and longer, they had to give storylines to more of the side characters and find ways to reinvent the main characters to make them more interesting. This results in a show in which the first couple of series are more down to earth, but by the end of the show, the characters drink a load of coffee and somehow they act as if they've been enjoying a bunch of delicious nose clams. What this means for the Australian version then is that they took inspiration from the American version as a whole, including the weirder, more outlandish moments. The Australian version is quite wacky from the start, skipping all of the initial grounded moments and jumping straight to the madcap stuff. We're getting a bit ahead of ourselves though. Let's look at how the show starts and the way it plays out. The first episode revolves around the workers of this office mostly working remotely, with the head office coming in and saying they're going to close down the location and ask everyone to work remotely permanently. The manager Hannah doesn't like this, as it's implied that going to the office is the sum of her social life and she doesn't want it to end. It starts on the madcap note, with that initial conversation resulting in quite an over-the-top reaction.
So what are we talking? Home detention? House arrest? What are we talking here, Alicia?
Please calm down, Hannah.
The show is also structured slightly oddly, in that it seems to start in the middle, like this is the second or third series. In both the original UK version and the US remake, the first few episodes are given to introducing the characters, who they are, what they do, what the company is, and why there are cameras pointing at them. It's there to give context and make it seem more like a real documentary. This show is as much a mockumentary in the same way as Modern Family is, in that it uses some of the tropes, but doesn't actually subscribe to the format really. We just see the characters going about their day and have to pick it up along the way and work it out ourselves. Some people prefer this method of storytelling, but I think it doesn't really work for this format. So the show has a few characters which are different versions of the original ones. Lizzie is the new Gareth/Dwight, Nick is the new Tim/Jim, and Greta is the new Dawn/Pam. To give this version some credit, apart from those, most of the other characters don't really have a direct comparison with either version. There is the IT guy Lloyd, who is sort of a sad sack, the head of HR guy, and the finance manager Deborah. Other than these, there are a couple of other smaller characters, and then quite a lot of background workers. It's more like the UK version in that sense, which too only had a few characters that ever got anything to do, with most of the other people working in the office having very little screen time or dialogue. Like the US version, they use a meeting room for a lot of the action. Those moments are probably some of the best in the US version, since they allow Steve Carell a good amount of flexibility to do his particular comedy style, and it works well. In the Australian version, it's mostly used for weak jokes, and when I say weak, I mean a full cup of milk with a sprinkle of tea weak. In the first episode, there is this joke around the acronym IRL that I genuinely had to pause after to try and work out if there was some hidden layer of humour that I was missing. It's so poor.
That now we can do TGIF Friday trivia quiz. IRL.
What's IRL?
This is IRL. In real life.
With the character Nick, they have again toned down his humour. In all versions of The Office, parts of this character was the pranks they played on the Gareth/Dwight characters. In the UK version, they are more childish.
Cock.
Whereas in the US version, they're more elaborate. In the Australian version, they are just bad.
I hate how you make me do this.
Nick, give me back my Tassie devil.
I'll give your devil back when you stop making those annoying noises.
I don't negotiate with terrorists.
The first prank of the series sees Nick stealing a small toy from Lizzie's desk, which she strolls over and takes back. Brilliant. There's a real lack of movement and urgency around this show. It often feels like the actors are purely reading a script, doing the specific actions, and then going back. In the UK version, when Tim steals some of Gareth's things, they chase each other around, make a bit of a mess, add some life to it. Oh, there are some other amazing pranks too in this series. Later in the episode, they prank Lizzie by making her take a video of moving some chairs in a car park. Then in another episode, they prank Lizzie by making her think a stain is an apparition. Then in another one, Nick wears a shirt with Lizzie's face on it. I mean, how did they get away with it? These are just outrageous. I can't believe this is on TV. One thing I will say about this version is that they did try to make the scripts original. There is very little of the actual plots or dialogue taken from any other version. I'm normally in favour of remakes doing this because it gives the audience something new, but I think in this instance they probably should have just stolen some of the good stuff instead of trying to make it their own. So Nick and Greta are friends at work, but they seem to secretly like each other, but Greta has a boyfriend so it can't work. We've seen this specific will they won't they relationship play out at least twice already for people that have watched the UK and US versions. I'm not sure we needed to watch it again, and it plays out basically the same way it always does, with the first series ending on them being a bit closer but not quite making it. There's also a slightly odd atmosphere the show has, which is hard to put my finger on. In the first episode, the HR guy mentions that they're going remote, and Hannah tells them that this will only happen if they don't make enough money. The group then sort of has muted reactions, with people speaking only one at a time.
To close down the office and send you all home. But I fought for your rights and negotiated a deal in which we all get to stay.
Why didn't you tell us?
Because I love you. And I was protecting you.
From who?
From yourselves.
It doesn't give off an office or even a group atmosphere. There's just no liveliness to any of it. A lot of the time, I struggle to work out what the joke is. Like this little bit here about a pizza party.
Okay. But it's a pizza party. Come on the pizza.
I'm not sure if that was supposed to be funny or awkward or cringy. I just don't understand what it was. The second episode is about a character that died, which Hannah tries to play off as a redundancy. When her manager finds out the truth, she organises a wake in the office to try and save some face. These sort of things made it difficult for me to put a finger on the Hannah character. There are certain aspects of both Michael Scott and David Brent, which, although they often do bad things and can be really frustrating and awkward, you sort of understand why they do the things they do, that they have some underlying need to be liked, even though they aren't much good at it. Hannah doesn't seem to really have that, and seems to be in a sort of bubble, just moving around the office causing havoc whilst everyone else works. There's a few other things in this episode that happen. They start a party planning committee like the US version, and there's some jokes which feel a bit in poor taste.
He worked from home mostly and was retired, but recently he unretired.
Probably should have stayed retired.
And I'll be...
The actual fake wake itself is interesting. Firstly, I think the set design here is pretty good. It's quite funny that they are using Halloween decorations for a wake. But then Hannah does a speech and thinks she's really funny and entertaining, but isn't. Now, as I touched on previously, both David Brent and Michael Scott had a lot of confidence when it came to their ability to entertain. However, what happened throughout both series is that when they actually got the chances to do this, they usually failed and they usually realised it. They became frustrated with the audience or made excuses for why the performance fell flat. In this version, Hannah never really acknowledges this. In her mind, she is a good entertainer and she gave a great performance that everyone loved. End of story. There's none of the pathos that we have come to associate with The Office. A lot of time is given in the run-up to these events. Us as the audience assume it's going to be a disaster, but it seems to turn out fine. The only disaster here is this show. The next episode revolves around the Melbourne Cup, and all the characters are in costume in just episode 3. The office is all dressed up, and it makes it feel more like a sitcom than a mockumentary. They really didn't want to go with the feeling of the original, and that everyone was slogging away at a mundane job. Instead, this place seems to have activities every day with loads going on. You can't really empathise with the characters, as they seem to have it pretty great. They introduce a character called Danny, who seems to be a sort of Chris Finch-like, and although everyone says they don't like him, he doesn't do anything particularly wrong, apart from being a bit loud and boorish.
But I think Sticky Fingers is making a the boys are headed. But it's Sticky Fingers by a nut.
He's definitely a far cry from the misogynist womanizers of Chris Finch and Todd Packer. It's watered down. There's lots of parts of this show that feel watered down. Later on, Lizzie steals a forklift and just kind of flings around the tarmac for a few seconds. Nothing gets destroyed, nothing gets hit, just a minor inconvenience. Why even have moments like this if they aren't going to go the whole hog? The fourth episode is when the show truly starts to go off the rails. The plot of this one is that Hannah has registered the office as a religion. Yes, a religion. This series is only 8 episodes long, and just halfway through, they have jumped so far past the shark that the shark is purely a speck on a faraway planet, a mere glint in the stars. So they do a whole load of shenanigans around this. They start to turn the stockroom into a prayer room, which we never really see pay off. They have another meeting room meeting which doesn't go anywhere, and then Hannah meets some guy in a charity shop who went to prison for tax evasion, which ends her doing the scam. Truly a roller coaster. Episode 6 is about them doing a pajama day, which is supposed to be a fundraising operation, but actually they're going to keep all the money to make their sales look better. If you weren't on these character sides yet, I'm sure you will be now. Lloyd has his little guy poking out of his pyjamas in this episode. Truly the heights of comedy gold. The last 3 episodes I won't talk through in much detail because at this point I was seriously struggling to get through it. They revolve around Hannah applying for a Businesswoman of the Year award, with the B plot of the coffee machine being broken. They go on an away day to a reptile zoo in someone's house, and the last episode of the series revolves around them trying to make enough sales to keep the office location open. The series ends on a particularly flat joke.
You didn't actually
Okay.
save the...
Thank you, Martin.
No.
I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
No one's coming in tomorrow, Hannah.
Well, we'll see.
After watching the whole thing, it just feels empty, lifeless. The jokes don't work, and half the time I'm not sure if they're actually supposed to be jokes or just characters looking into the camera hoping something they said was accidentally funny. How can a show be brand new but already feel so tired and lacking in ideas? There's just nothing about it. It's not fresh, funny, provocative, anything. Mockumentaries don't always need to be laugh out loud. Other than The Office, Abbott Elementary is a good recent example of a mockumentary which has more gentle comedy but works because it can feel genuinely warm too. That show knew what it wanted to accomplish and it achieved it. This show doesn't seem to know what it wants to do. It can't decide if it's a wacky sitcom or a mockumentary, and it misses both camps. It's a real shame because this series was developed by Jackie Van Beek, who a few years back wrote and directed The Breaker Upperers, which is a really great movie. I'd recommend that to anyone. This, though, is purely a miss. Honestly, after watching all the 8 episodes in this series, I only smiled once, and it's this small joke in the first episode around the intern moving a whiteboard stand. I can't believe that this is the funniest part of this entire show. Anyway, that's it from me. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. It would really mean a lot. I also have a Patreon if you want to support me. I have an exclusive video on there about the US version of the IT Crowd, and I'm planning to do an exclusive series soon around the US version of the Inbetweeners. I have a few other channels too on screen now and some socials. Alright, goodbye.